Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Nerd Ledger. I am Cage, and I am joined by your friendly neighborhood co-host, Chair.
Chair, what's up?
What's up? Yeah, we got to talk about Andor. We got a lot of Andor to talk about because we talked about episodes 1, 2, and 3 already. Now we got to talk about episodes 4 through 12. I'm not going to list them all out. You guys know how to count, so. But yeah, do you have any initial thoughts before we start talking about all these episodes?
Oh wow, what a fucking amazing show.
Yeah.
That's really all I can really think of. What else can you think of?
Um. Yeah. I think Andor. Uh. Well, I'm not gonna say any spoilers right now, but I'll just say spoiler warning because we will be talking about spoilers. So if you haven't watched in all of Andor, you should probably not listen to this. But yeah, I
Yes,
think
absolutely.
I think Andor really it bridges this gap that you're not super familiar with. Like when you think about what Star Wars is and what it's for and who it's for, Andor is juxtaposed in some ways to that, right? Like Star Wars is for kids, right? Ultimately, like George Lucas made Star Wars for children,
Yeah.
and it's cool and it's fun and it's about all this kind of hopefulness and whatever. Like even Empire Strikes Back, right? When it ends, our heroes have lost, but you're still hopeful for the future because they're gonna go to Tatooine and they're gonna get Han back, and like they kind of allude to all that stuff. So you still feel this sense of hope at the end of the movie, right? At the end of Andor, you might feel some hope, but you're gonna feel more sad, I
hmm
think, right? And some of that is knowing where the story goes from there, but a lot of it is like Andor is for adults, and more specifically for adults who grew up watching Star Wars as children, right? Andor is said, we see where you are now, and this is what you deserve for content. It doesn't treat you like a child. It doesn't come across as a story for children. Like this is just mature Star Wars for mature Star Wars fans.
Hmm.
At least
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. This is like everything an adult wanted out of Star Wars, like some more gritty, realistic take of what it's like to live in the Empire, of like what the Empire is really like for the day-to-day person. I think that the best thing that Andor did in season 2 is have these newscasters outside of Gorman
yeah,
who are
the
reporting just
propaganda
like they were.
machines.
Yeah, dude, and they were reporting in three different, like they're reporting in different styles, like in like a 50s style and like an 80s style and then more like a modern style. And like seeing that in Star Wars is so crazy to see. Like,
Yeah,
it was, yeah, dude, it was so
and,
good.
and I appreciate as well that there's really no ambiguity, right? Like, you've heard people argue who watch the original trilogy that maybe the Empire isn't that bad. Maybe there were good intentions, right? And I think there was even, I don't know if it was an actual book, like a licensed Star Wars book or like someone's fan fiction, but I remember reading and having conversations about this story that Palpatine was actually a good guy who was like trying to do the right things, and it all kind of slipped away and he couldn't control it and all this stuff. And it's an interesting thing to think about. It's never been reality, and it was never reality in the original trilogy either. Like, sure, there's a little more ambiguity that you could put there because like they're not doing things that are that bad except for fucking blowing up planets, but apparently people
Mhm.
were okay with that because it was a children's movie. um, but there's no ambiguity here. Like the Empire is evil, and there's there's gray areas, of course, where you have uh, people that are the perfect people to be swept up by the Empire, right? People like Cyril Khan, who is ambitious and he's eager and all these things, but he is not the kind. He doesn't understand what he's got himself into, right?
Mhm.
Fully, and by the time he does understand, it's too late. Like he's always thought he's doing what's right. He's upholding justice, right? Even his whole arc in season 1 about pursuing Cassian for killing some police officers on whatever that planet was. Like he felt like that's the right thing to do, and it wasn't until it was way too late that he realized uh, that the Empire is not about upholding justice and being the ultimate good in the universe, right? Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
there
his
there
revelation in that square was just so powerful. Like everything about it, dude, is just
yeah,
ah man. Like, and I loved him and what's her name? Who's the ISB chick? I always forget
Dedra
her name. Detra. I
Dedra
love their
Miro,
relationship. I love their relationship so much. I really
yeah,
did. I thought it was like because like it starts out like Cyril and her are living together happily on Coruscant,
Coruscant,
right?
yeah,
You can see how like you can tell by the tone of music, by the light present in the scene, like that this is like them, like he's at this bureau of something or other and he
yeah,
got a bunch of promotions because he's a fucking nosy son of a bitch and he gets after things and he sinks his teeth into things, so he got promoted for like exposing his coworkers for like running a smuggling ring, and she's like climbing through the ranks of ISB, pursuing justice, and I think they're both very clearly happy. Like I genuinely think that they genuinely love each other. Like I really think that, like
oh
about the
yeah,
relationship is it, and I
yeah.
think that's like one thing that is, and setting that up for villainous characters is such a hard thing to do, and I think it was like man, it was so
Well,
good.
and every for the most part, every character had a
By the
perfect
way,
arc, right?
props to every actor who is in this show
Yeah,
for giving 120%. Every side actor, like when right after Mon Mothma gave her speech, it cut to some like Imperial Intelligence Center that was monitoring all the senators' offices, right? The ISB center that was monitoring,
yeah,
and we had never seen any of these people before, and they just got in there and they just started fucking acting, man, and like it was this whole it's just
yeah,
you started caring about like these ISB guys, like the suspense, like the buildup. I gotta go check on something real quick.
yeah. No worries. Um, there are some interesting conversations to have or to be had around kind of this, and especially around Cyril. A lot of people have this idea that, well, he didn't really know what he was doing, so is he really that bad? And like, we shouldn't get things mistaken, and obviously there is this parallel between like, you know, Nazis, like, and it's one that people draw. And of course, when you're interpreting art, all your interpretations are valid as long as there's text to support it. But people draw these lines between the Empire and Nazis, and saying, well, a lot of Nazis maybe weren't that bad; they were just following orders, and things like that. But I think when you come down to questions of morality and ethics, so it's hard for anyone to say, well, they couldn't they didn't know what the Empire was actually doing, right? And sure, maybe Cyril didn't, but he can't truly believe, having worked for them, that everything is being done in the interest of good. And maybe he does. And then you have those interesting conversations, I suppose, of, well, was he really bad? Was he just caught up in something he didn't understand? How culpable is he for that? Is ignorance an excuse? Maybe, maybe not. Like there's some conversations that can be had around there that are interesting. I don't think you ever walk away with a satisfying conclusion, but because it's going to be different, everyone's going to look at it a little differently based on their own worldview. So I don't think Chair's back yet. So we'll just.
I'm back. I'm back.
Oh, okay, okay, you're back.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll start with episode 4. So every 3 episodes is pretty much like an arc, quote unquote. And we're jumping a year every time. So as we get closer and closer to the Battle of Yavin, we keep jumping years here. So episode 4.
Yeah, the one year jump was really sudden.
Yeah, episode 4 starts with another year jump.
Mm.
We're focused in this episode on Bix and Cassian as they're in like the safe house on Coruscant. She's having nightmares about the guy who had tortured her. Cyril at this time is on Gorman, Edie is disappointed that he's on Gorman. She thinks like they've shelved him there, and she's upset that he abandoned his girlfriend or whatever, which we all know is not the case. We get introduced to these Gorman spies, this network, these freedom fighters on Gorman, and they're very suspicious, obviously, of all the things that are happening on their planet. We also have like this kind of back and forth between Cassian and Bix, where he like killed somebody for something. And then we have yes, Cassian killed somebody for that. That's all Bix, right? Like, and he viewed them as a threat, and apparently it was like a kid or something. I don't know, but yeah. So this is really the start of the Gorman plot, right? And we get introduced to all the freedom fighters and this guy Rylance, who's like the leader. Cyril like is all about trying to find what are they called, outside agitators or some shit.
Yeah.
We find out that there's a memorial on Gorman where Tarkin straight up just murdered a bunch of unarmed Gormans
By landing a shuttle on them.
Yeah. There's some stuff here with Luthen and Cassian where like it's starting to get a little discordant, but Cassian does go on a mission for Luthen to go meet Rylance on Gorman. Then we also have this story with this rebel outpost on Dakar where Wilmot goes. He meets up with Saw Gerrera, and they're doing this whole thing with Rhydonium. And there's this whole plot point around there. And that episode ends with Bix just like taking a bunch of medicine or some shit to help her sleep. So, do you want to talk about this in terms of an arc or in terms of an episode? Because I'm sure there's.
I think we should talk about. I think everything is in arc format. 3 episodes at a time is how I think it was designed to be consumed.
Yeah.
I think like as the arc is just the best way to go about it, because some episodes bleed straight into the other, and it's just that other arc was so long ago. I keep missing.
It was.
By the way, Nerdy Boy and Human has the worst co-host in the world, Chair, because I keep fucking disappearing and falling off the face of the earth. I'm here now though. Don't worry. So yeah. It's just I barely remember most of it. All I remember was really good, and I remember getting addicted and like her like talking like Luthen like him like saying something really motivating to her to not be addicted to the drug anymore, basically, and and then Cassian comes to get her, and
Yeah, he found the drugs and says it works for a while, but the dreams come back worse when you stop. And so I wouldn't remember any of this either if I hadn't taken notes. And I take notes just to make sure that I'm not forgetting anything important. And sometimes I take way too many notes. But essentially, the next episode is just Cassian going to Gorman. Cyril is still meeting with Rylance, so they're still doing whatever. Luthen, talks to Bix about, he finds out she's doing these drugs or whatever. Cyril is like unknowingly helping the Empire, but like he thinks he's like helping the freedom fighters, which is very odd. He doesn't really understand what's happening. And essentially, this is like, the only plot point I didn't really get too much in this series was like the Rhydonium shit with Saw Gerrera. Like I get it ties in because at the end, right, like Cassian's informant Tivik is like, he's planted there and then he escapes and he's trying to contact Cassian. So there's all this stuff. And Saw Gerrera is also, a prominent figure in Star Wars history. He was in Clone Wars. He was in Rebels. He was in Rogue One. But like in this show, all he does is like huff fumes and like that's about it. So
yep.
But yeah, then we have, this is where you start to see parts of Luthen and Clea's network become compromised, right? Like they had to get their listening device out of whatever his face, Golden's office or whatever his collection of stuff, which was cool because we have this back and forth between Mon Mothma and Krennic, and we also have just some interesting things happening there, and ultimately we get to this whole thing where after Cassian spends time on Gorman, he's like, "Yo, these guys are not ready for shit. Like they don't know what they're doing." And Luthen doesn't really like the advice that Cassian's given him about shit, and he believes that Gorman should do the things that that they're trying to do, and Cassian knows like it just means that they're all gonna die pretty much if they do that, and Luthen's okay with them dying because it means something to him, right? Like it's the spark of rebellion. It's this idea that like if it'll force the Emperor's hand, and when the Empire does things that they're gonna do, it's gonna make people resist, right? It's gonna make people want to rebel against the Empire. And that's something Cassian's not really okay with. And Cassian also at this point kind of starts to question why he's still doing this, right? Because Cassian is fighting for this. Really, he's fighting for a life, and the life he wants is ultimately with Bix. And so once he has that life, he doesn't. He has nothing really to fight for anymore, right? So he starts to like kind of pull back a little bit. He also finds out that Luthen went and talked to Bix, and he didn't like that very much. We have this reunion between Cinta and Vel on Gorman because they're gonna follow through with what Luthen wanted and help them go steal some weapons from the Empire, so that the Empire, has an excuse to do things. And this whole time, right, as you mentioned, you have these reporters who are like just propaganda machines out there saying that like the citizens on Gorman are becoming violent. They're all becoming like crime rates are through the roof. They're agitating and poking and forcing the hand of the Empire and all this stuff, which we all know is not true. But that's the message that gets out in the universe. We find out that over this year that Cinta and Vel hadn't seen each other. Like she had some accident that she had to recover from. As Cyril doesn't know at all what the Empire is doing and what Dedra's doing. Like they're straight up just manipulating him as well. And so then we have this attack planned by the Gorman freedom fighters, and they're ready to go steal some stuff. We get our first introduction to Bail Organa, who is played by a new actor in this series because the original actor wasn't available. So we got a new actor for Bail Organa, which a lot of people were mad about, but I thought he did a fine job.
No, he's great. He's fantastic.
Yeah. And so we see this attack playing out, and it ends up with the Gormans, who were continuously warned to follow orders, not following orders, and it ends up with Cinta being shot and killed, and Vel really drilled into that guy about how like she was a true warrior, and she was making a difference, and you took her life, and you haven't done anything yet, so now you have to live the rest of your life trying to live up to what she was, and kind of stuff like that. And then the episode ends, right? We end the arc. So we end the first part of the Gorman arc, and we end the Bix Cassian arc with Bix and torturing the guy, the scientist guy who works for the Empire. His name is Gorst at the end, and then they blow up the fucking building. So then we jump another year. So for our third arc, episodes 7 to 9, this is really the Gorman arc. This is probably the peak of the series, you would say.
Yep. That set piece with everything that happened in the square is probably one of the most like amazingly well done things I've seen like done in a show, in a movie. Like everything was, those are all real actors. That was obviously a real building. They're obviously setting off explosions in the background, all practical effects, very minimal CGI. except for when the droids were unleashed into the general populace and started murdering people, and that's an acceptable use of CGI because it was really crazy and badass.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that it was absolutely the pinnacle of the series was that whole sequence.
Yeah, so this arc is not only the Gorman arc, it's the start of the Yavin arc, right? So Cassian and Bix are living on Yavin. Cassian is injured, and so they're just enjoying life there. Willman shows up. He tells them that Luthen wants to know if Cassian's ready to go back to work. Cassian doesn't he doesn't really want to go back to work for Luthen because he's enjoying life. He's settled down with Bix with the proper Rebel Alliance now, right? Like, and this is where you kind of get this other dichotomy of like a lot of the rebellion and the ideas around the rebellion started with Luthen, but it was never gonna be able to be a proper organized rebellion until what you have on Yavin, right? You have like the proper Rebel Alliance there that is trying to do things a little different, right? So
Yeah.
then we find out that Wilmon has been for the past year, right? Because it's another year time jump. He's been on Gorman, trying to help Luthen. Luthen wants Cassian to take out Dedra. We know that the Empire is going to destroy Gorman for the materials they need. Cyril starts to become a bit suspicious because he's being misled. There's a lot of like security and surveillance going on Coruscant with all the bugging and all the things happening with that. We had this Gorman senator who like what? So you have this other plot where Mon Mothma is like really fighting in the Senate to try to get her fellow senators to understand like why are we just looking at all these planets that have been peaceful forever, have their crime rates go through the roof, and we're just approving all this, like giving all this control to the Empire to do whatever the fuck they want. Like it's like clearly something's not right. And so you have the senator from Gorman who thanks her for her courage, but at the same time like he's not willing to even really stand up because he's afraid to go against the Emperor. And so there's a lot of that like coercion going on, right? Where people are afraid to speak out or resist the Emperor because of what could happen to them, what could happen to their family, what could happen to their planet. So there's all that also happening under the surface as well. We also have this sequence with Cassian and the Force healer, and I don't know. I think that was an interesting thing, but I didn't have much of a takeaway from it. Did you interpret anything in that scene?
Not really.
Because Cassian's really against the Force healer. He's like doesn't want to see her, doesn't believe it'll help, and Bix is like forcing it, right? Like
yeah.
I think it's because Cassian lightweight does believe in it, but also like he's afraid of his destiny, right? Because part of Cassian knows, and even Luthen mentions it a couple times in conversations with Cassian, like he knows he's gonna die. Like he's not gonna live a happy life. He's gonna give his life as part of this. And I think he's afraid of the Force healer intuiting some of that, or something. And yeah, it's interesting, but so much of Cassian's story in this is once he's settled down with Bix, like he doesn't really want to fight anymore. He's tired. He wants to settle down, and part of that is also he knows if he's not with her, he's gonna fight until he dies. And I mean, not to spoil it, but that's ultimately where things go. But yeah, she also says like Cassian is kind of like gathering as he goes, like, and he has like a place he needs to be, like he's not settled, like, but now he is kind of. So then you have Cyril on Gorman, who's still in contact with the Resistance there. The Force healing did end up kind of helping Cassian, and him and Will are headed to Gorman. Vel is also on Yavin. Now we get a call out of General Dodonna, who we all know. We don't see him, but we hear his name. And yeah, we end this episode, episode 7, with Cassian in the hotel room, and there's some stormtroopers above him, and I don't know if it's like a intentional thing, but something you see a lot in this show is you see a lot of Imperial officers, but you never really see stormtroopers unless like some shit's about to happen, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting point. So episode 8 is where this all kind of comes to a head. This is where you have all this shit in the square, in the town center. The Empire has essentially turned their headquarters in Gorman into a fortress. Rylance knows that the Empire is just like trying to bait them. Cyril still doesn't really know that he's being played. We get the line from the bellhop guy, the guy who works at the hotel, that rebellions are built on hope, which is the same thing that Generoso says, which is the same thing Cassian says. They've all said it. And so that kind of gives us some insight into him eventually throwing a massive fucking thermal detonator at a bunch of people. They end up trying to trap the Gorman people in the plaza. The Gormans are also trying to, they're planning some shit at the memorial site where Tarkin landed on a bunch of people. We get Gormans. They start singing as the Imperials intentionally are coming out just to fuck with them, right? To start some shit. Cyril ends up confronting Dedra, which is a very intense scene. He ends up like choking her.
Very intense.
Because like
his whole world is breaking down, and he thought this girl that he loved, that liked him and thought he respected him and was using him and was, I don't know. I feel like that could have been handled a little bit differently, but also at the same time, I understand what was going on.
Yeah. I mean, you feel just the weight of the situation hitting him like in the face all at once. And then the Empire, well, he leaves, right? And he goes back out into the crowd. The Empire decides to incite a riot by having someone shoot their own troops so that, a riot breaks out, essentially. The Imperials are, like, moving through the crowd as this happens. It's an all-out shootout. The Empire's just mowing down everybody. They send out the KX droids. And Cyril's just watching firsthand how the Empire truly operates, which is crazy. Cassian gets a shot at Dedra, but he misses because Cyril ends up attacking him. So this is one of those things where, like,
do you think that was like the Force? Do you think that was the Force because he was still protecting Dedra, like in a way? Do you think?
Well, I think it's twofold here, right? Like, I don't know if Cyril knows necessarily. He might know that Cassian was trying to shoot Dedra, right? But like, Cyril knows Cassian because he knows Cassian killed those two police officers or whatever, the guards, in the first episode of season 1, right? And Cyril spends the whole season trying to track down Cassian, ends up getting him arrested, right, and put in prison, and now here he is, free, right? There's also the whole Ferrex thing. Now he sees him. Like, when I first watched it, I was like, brother, you just watched your whole world crash down because of how fucked up the Empire is. And, like, instead of taking accountability for your role in it, you're going to just go attack somebody that you should be on their side at this point. But, like, you kind of understand, like, he has a history with Cassian, right? But Cassian, he doesn't even know who the fuck he is, really. So, they start brawling. There's a bunch of explosions. One ends up, like, hitting Cyril in the face. But Cyril is not, he's not dead. He has Cass at gunpoint. He doesn't take the shot, and then Rylance ends up killing Cyril. And there's a lot of weight there, right? And then you got your guy Will, and he doesn't want to leave Gorman without his girlfriend Drina. And he ends up staying behind. Cassian takes the KX unit that they hit with a big tank. So that they can go reprogram it, and then we have Dedra, who is also kind of struggling. She's having a little bit of a breakdown after watching all of this. So, it's a crazy episode.
Yep.
So
it was a crazy episode, and that the whole set piece of the riot. They're nothing but actors. They were all background actors and everything like that. They were all in costume. All the troopers were individual actors. You could see their faces. Some of them weren't stormtroopers. Some of them were just regular Imperial troopers. You could see their faces, which means they had to act. They couldn't just, like hide their face behind a helmet and hope the acting worked. It was just the stress on their faces, like everything about it, man.
yeah. I don't know why I took the notes. I don't know. Anyway, but yes. Yeah, it's a.
They're all speaking French. Everyone's speaking French. Gorman is very French. It's just France, space France.
It is very French, yeah. But
it's just space,
it is a whole new
space
language,
France. Yeah.
It sounds very French, yeah. Yeah, it's a heavy episode, and the thing that Andor does very well when it wants to is it builds tension really well. Like it has you waiting and anticipating and anxious, and it's even though like we've known from from the beginning, right? Episode 1 or 2 where they're talking about Gorman. We know why they're there. We know what's going to happen. We know the whole time. But that doesn't make it any less and anxiety riddled when it all starts to happen, when it all starts to unravel and everything starts to go as the Empire had planned it, right? So in the beginning of episode 9, the senator from Gorman, Oran, is actually being arrested by stormtroopers on Coruscant. Mon Mothma wants to make a speech, and she asks Bail Organa for his help. He says that they need to buy time to make sure that Yavin is ready. He'll help Mon to get to make her speech, and then get her out. He's gonna still be, he's not gonna sacrifice himself yet. He'll meet her in Yavin the following year. Cassian is going to attend the Senate hearing, but then he says he's not coming back, and he'll be saving Mon Mothma and getting her out. A listening device is discovered in Mon Mothma's chambers. Luthen and Mon have this very intense conversation because part of it is she knows that Luthen had Take Holma killed because he was a risk. And I think she's afraid to accept his help because she knows a lot, and she's afraid that he's going to end up having her killed, regardless of what happens, right? Because Mon Mothma being arrested and captured by the Empire is a massive threat to Luthen.
Yeah.
So we have that kind of intense thing happening, and Luthen tells her that Bail's people have been compromised. Mon Mothma finds out that Erskine has been working for Luthen, who's her advisor or assistant or whatever. So she dismisses him. Erskine and Cass end up getting into the Senate building. Mon Mothma is about to speak, and Imperials are trying to shut down the feed, but they can't get it down until the end because, not that easy. The Senate ends up erupting after her speech, calling her a traitor. Cassian, of course, he gets her out. He's just shooting people left and right. It's great. Very Cassian of him. Willman is injured, and Drina, they made it out of Gorman. We find out back on Yavin, Cass and Will are reunited. Cassian tells Bix that he's done and he wants to settle down with her. And then the arc ends here because when he wakes up, Bix is gone, and she left him a video to tell him that she left. And she didn't want to be the reason why he left the rebellion, and she wants him to keep fighting. And she says that when it's all over, and when they win, that they'll be together again. She says, "I'll find you." And obviously that's heartbreaking. And the episode ends, and the arc ends with the birth of K2SO as they reprogram the KX droid, and it becomes, K2SO. So, yeah. we do find out at the end of the series why Bix ultimately left. But it's very sad. It's very sad. So once this episode ends, we enter into our final arc of episodes that came out yesterday. Was it yesterday?
Yep.
2 days ago. And our final time jump. Now we're 1 year before the Battle of Yavin. And things are starting to happen very quickly, right? So Luthen ends up meeting with Lonnie, his ISB informant. And Lonnie tells him that Dedra is looking for a team to find Luthen on Coruscant. He says he's burned. He's figured out everything. He's trying to bargain for protection. He found out that the Emperor's energy program is a lie. Everything is a cover-up, essentially, for the Death Star. And of course, Luthen lied and said he'd keep him safe. But no, Lonnie's dead. Luthen says he's gonna send out the communication about everything they've learned. He tries to send Clea away. He starts destroying the network. When Dedra shows up, which again is another very tense situation, Dedra ends up pulling out the Imperial Starpath unit, and the Shroud of Everything kind of falls down around us. Luthen tells her she's too late, that the rebellion is everywhere now. He tries to kill himself to protect the info that she wants. And then, obviously she's trying to keep him alive. We have Clea watching this, and then we go into like this flashback. And tell me your interpretation of this, because it seemed to me that the young Luthen is somehow like a sergeant in the Empire. Is that how you interpreted it?
Yeah, kind of.
And they're like on some planet, and the Imperials are just like killing all the citizens on that planet. And that's like what. And Luthen ends up finding Clea hidden in a compartment on a ship and decides to protect her. And I think this is the spark of where he's decided, I can't do this anymore. We have to fight back somehow.
Yeah.
So it's hard to tell if he was actually an Imperial or not, but I'm pretty sure he was. And then back in modern day, Clea is trying to get into the hospital. You don't know at this point if she's trying to save him or kill him to protect the information. She does kill him. Spoiler alert. Dedra ends up getting arrested. And there's some very interesting...
She was a leak. She was a leak. She was a breach. She was the leak.
Yeah, which is like, Dedra has her serial moment in the way that like she ends up a victim of the things that she believed in, right? Yeah. Because like ultimately, this is a very I'd say religious idea, but it's also prevalent in literature everywhere, and especially in Tolkien's works. The idea that evil will always eventually destroy itself, and it's because evil is inherently untrusting. It's inherently all about itself, and that's how the Empire operates, to the point where it doesn't matter how loyal you've been to the Empire. If they suspect you of anything because they can't trust anyone, even their own Imperial officers, they come after you. And Dedra, all she's ever done is try to help the Empire, and she did things that were questionable, of course, and all of this stuff, right? She ultimately finds the most important rebel that exists at this time, Luthen, and is trying to save his life to get information out of him. And she finds herself in a cell because she's put the Empire at risk. Because Lonnie had her card, they think they were conspiring, and they weren't, but he found out about the Death Star project because of her. She ends up, in the very last episode, we see her in the same kind of cell we saw Cassian in. We all know how Imperial prisons are. Like, her whole life is gone. And
she's going to be building parts for the Death Star, like Cassian was. Like the rest,
And ultimately, did she do anything wrong, really? Not really. And could she have been a great resource for the Empire still? Most likely. But the Empire, again, as an evil entity, they end up destroying themselves, right? Anyway, back to Kid Clea. She's very bold. She watches as the Empire shoots down a bunch of innocent kids and old people on this random planet. Luthen blows up some Imperial vehicles. I believe they were on Naboo when that happened.
Yep.
And yeah, we end up with Clea in the hospital. She turns off the machine that's keeping Luthen alive. She's crying. She kisses him goodbye. Krennic, I think that's the end of that episode. Then we have Krennic talking to Dedra, and she thinks that he gave Lonnie her cert. She ends up getting ousted. We see Clea chiseling a wall for some comms devices to send messages to Wilman on Yavin. Cassian, Melshi, K2, they're all gambling. They end up going to go try to save Clea. Hirt, who is like this Imperial officer, ends up asking Dedra for help, and she, even though she's arrested, she ends up giving him good information, which he can use to find Clea, and they do eventually find her.
Yeah.
Clea doesn't want to go to Yavin because everyone in the Rebel Alliance hates Luthen and his methods and all of that stuff. And she tells Cassian about the weapon and wants him to just share the information. K2 is fucking hilarious as he just goes around taking out Imperials and shit all nonchalantly. And then the episode kind of ends with the Imperials closing in on the apartment. So episode was 11. It's a pretty quick episode. And then, yeah, the final episode, we start with a stun grenade taking out, knocking out some of our heroes. But Melshi's all right. He's firing back. K2 comes in. Clea ends up injured. They get out. They go back to Yavin. On Yavin, we see Saw Gerrera talking to Mon Mothma and Draven. Bail Organa is also there at this point. Cassian comes. He presents the news he learned to the rebel leaders. No one trusts Luthen. Everyone thinks that Cassian is not objective. He ends up on like house arrest or some shit. Mon Mothma ends up visiting her cousin Vel. Tells her about Luthen dying. Asks Vel to help her believe Cassian's story. We also have this tidbit about Cassian's informant Tivik on Kafrene, who's been trying to contact Cassian. He doesn't want to talk to anybody else. We have, again, evil destroying itself. Partagaz, the other Imperial leader who was Dedra's boss and Hirt's boss, he is listening to Nemik's message about rebellion and hope and how it spreads and all this stuff. And then he's going to end up getting arrested.
Also, I like how they said how they're like fascism and like how the evil is unnatural, because it really is. Like that kind of control really is unnatural. Like you just can't control people like that, or else they go insane and start rebelling. Like I'm tearing everything down.
Yeah, I mean we could spend probably an hour dissecting even Mon Mothma's speech about the abyss and different things like that. We don't have the time for it here, but it was a very good speech. So if you haven't watched it, go watch her speech and then go watch the Rebels episode, season 3, episode 18, I think, which is how she ultimately gets out. Right, Cassian helps her out, but he doesn't bring her to Yavin. She gets to Yavin through Hera and the other rebels from Rebels. So Partagaz is going to also be arrested, and he ends up killing himself. Right, another loyal soldier to the Empire who could have been useful, but because he was involved with this situation where people now know about the Death Star, he's got to go too, right? We also have Clea now, like just walking around. She finds Vel. They talk. Cassian is going to go meet Tivik at the end of this episode. We see the Death Star. And we see Bix with Cassian's baby. So there's a lot that has happened, and that's how we wrap all this up. So what are your final thoughts?
Great show. Scale ridiculous. The acting was out of this level. Everything about it.
Effects were great. Practical effects, CG effects.
Practical effects. K2SO was in it. We didn't even talk about him that much. He was in the show.
I talked about him.
Yeah, a little bit, but this is how he gets introduced, and he gets like sliced in half.
Yeah.
And
But the
it's
the
just
way he was just taking out the Imperials was fucking hilarious.
yeah, it was. It was really funny to watch.
He's just super nonchalant, just walking around like kicking people through walls and shit.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
I really like that model. That design of the Imperial Protocol droid is really inspired the K2SO model, the
Hmm.
K2 model. It's really well done.
Yeah. And this is the phenomenon that is Andor, right? Like if you said after Rogue One came out, like 2016 when it came out, if you said, "Hey, they're gonna make a show about Andor, about Cassian, uh, a prequel show," nobody would go, "Oh my god, that sounds amazing! I can't wait." Right? Like we got Rogue One, and Rogue One is another movie where when you go, "Hey, they're gonna make a movie about how some rebels get the plans to the first Death Star," people kind of go, "Well, we don't really need to see that. Like we know about it already. We don't need to
Well, that
see
was
it."
the first thing about and there was the first thing about Andor, right? Like Andor was like, oh, by the way, like we don't need to see that.
Yeah,
Wow, Rogue One was really good. Hey, you know that one guy in the show that like had a little bit of a part, like double agent? He's gonna get his own show. Oh, we don't need to see that. Turns
yeah.
out being like the best thing that they've ever made.
Exactly. Like, and that's the point I'm making, right? It's like a phenomenon where like people think they know what they want, but nobody like. This is my biggest problem with the way everybody criticizes media today. Like, people see a Fantastic Four trailer with Johnny Storm that apparently isn't a womanizer and Silver Surfer that's a woman, and they've already made their minds up it's gonna be terrible. You haven't seen
Yeah.
anything yet. Like, I get it. We hear, oh, we're making the show about Cassian Andor. You go, nobody asked for that. Who cares? But then it's phenomenal because it's the art that matters. Like the subject matter, you can go, oh, that doesn't sound like an interesting concept. It doesn't need to be an interesting concept to be an amazing show, right? Like, and this is where the rubber meets the rail or whatever. Like, it's it. It doesn't matter, right? They could say we're gonna make a show. Like, they made a show about Boba Fett, and it wasn't a good show. Everybody was excited
Yeah.
for that. We wanted a Boba Fett show. The Mandalorian as a series is what people wanted, but about Boba Fett. And it ends up being about this other guy called the Mandalorian, Din Djarin. But that people always wanted a show about Boba Fett. We end up getting one, and it's not what you wanted at all, right? And this is what I mean when I talk about anything. Like people will say Kathleen Kennedy has done an awful job with Star Wars because of the sequel trilogy, right?
Hmm.
And what I say is if you're gonna give her the blame for that, which she rightly deserves, you have to give her credit for the things that go well, right? And Andor
Yeah.
is one of those things that went well, and The Mandalorian is another one of those things that went well. And it's not about who's in charge making all the decisions to make things good or bad and saying you can or can't do this. It's about who they hire. And if you hire the right people, Tony Gilroy and Jon Favreau, you get a good product. When you just don't have a plan and you hire J.J. Abrams and then Ryan Johnson and then Colin Trevorrow, who you then replace later with J.J. Abrams, that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
You hire the right people who care about Star Wars, people who care about what the stories are telling, like Tony Gilroy with Andor and Rogue One, like Jon Favreau with The Mandalorian. You end up with products that fans can enjoy and that they love, right? Very different series. Andor is an adult version of Star Wars that just works because
Yeah.
it's great storytelling that takes place in the frame of Star Wars, right? We have even the prequels. We can talk about the prequels honestly and say it's not great storytelling, but we still love the movies because they're Star Wars movies that ultimately are like it's still Star Wars, right? Like we can all say storytelling wise, like the way everything is structured isn't great. Like George Lucas wishes he could create the tension that Tony Gilroy created in Andor, right? But conceptually, the early Star Wars, the prequels are amazing, and they push the boundaries of technology, and they do all these other things really well. The new movies, the sequel trilogy, it's bad storytelling, and sure, it's prettier graphics, but you're not accomplishing anything. George Lucas isn't associated with it anymore, and so it's hard for fans to care about that. but like it's the lifelong story of finding out that the things you think you want aren't always the things you want, right? And just because we don't need something doesn't mean we don't benefit from having it. And Andor is the perfect example of that. Like nobody asked for it, we didn't need it, but we got it, and it's amazing. So, here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah. I mean, two seasons. We're not getting more, obviously, because it leads right into Rogue One. In terms of Star Wars shows, it's got to be. I mean, does it surpass The Mandalorian? Because even though The Mandalorian is great, season 2 slipping into season 3 is definitely a drop off. Whereas Andor is just good all the way through, right? So
yeah, Andor's really really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just it's just all so good because like it's hard, it's hard to put in words how good everything is and ties together. Like his scenes when he's on Yavin and the cabin, bonding with his bonding with the other rebels and with all his different people that he's met, and forming these different relationships and everything like that. And then he gets right into the most intense action you've ever seen and everything like that. It's just that whole hallway sequence is so intense because they were kind of fucked there if K2 didn't show up,
Yeah.
because they were really getting fucked by those Imperial Special Forces guys. They really were.
Yeah. I mean, with the stun grenade, like, essentially made them sitting ducks, right?
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for Melshi with his little blaster not being affected, like, they would have all just been captured, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Very good stuff. Loved it. Loved everything about it. And it's funny because after, like, my wife ended up watching season 2 with me pretty much. She didn't watch season 1, but she still got most of it, and she was kind of like, she was very sad at the end of Andor. Like she's like, why does it make me so sad? Like, it's such a sad series. And I was like, well, it is sad, right? Like the end sequence, right, where you see Andor just kind of like walking through, ready to go meet Tivik, and you have like these cuts around him of all the rebels there, but then you see also Mon Mothma at a certain point. You see Bix with his child. You see Dedra in the prison. Like all these stories wrapping up, and the music is very like epic. It's really cool, and it's like hopeful at that point of the story, and you see his child and everything, and it's like, it's sad because we know he dies soon. Like, he's going from here to go shoot his informant, and then meet up with Jyn Erso and all these other people from Jeddah and all this stuff, and they're gonna go to Scarif, and they're gonna get the Death Star plans, and he's gonna sit on the beach with Jyn and watch the planet get destroyed.
Yep.
Like, that's why it's sad. But
yep.
It's not about all of that. It's about people willing to fight and sacrifice themselves for a better future. It's like one of Luthen's lines from season 1, right? It's like, I'm fighting for a sunrise I know I'll never see, right? Like, they know they're not going to make it. It's just the
also
reality.
Luthien speech, Daedra, but there's a whole universe out there ready to disgust you. That all that shit was really powerful too. And oh man, what a good show.
It's just
It's
well
like,
written,
where do we go?
executed.
Where do we go from? Yeah, music was great. Where do we go from now, dude? Like, really, like, what do we have next in Star Wars coming up? Do you know? I know we said that Ryan Gosling movie is the only thing I remember that we talked about, but we got
Ahsoka season 2. We have the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. We have animated show with Darth Maul coming out. I don't know if you watched Tales of the Underworld, like the short series. It focuses on Asajj Ventress mostly. I watched the first 2 episodes.
I did watch Tales of the Underworld because it was Star Wars Day, so I decided to watch it.
Yeah, I only watched a couple episodes because I wanted to watch them while I was getting a tattoo, and I started watching them, but then I ended up just talking to the tattoo artist for most of the time. So
Yeah.
Didn't get to watch them really. So I watched the first couple episodes. I did like I mean, the first episode starts with the scene out of the end of Dark Disciple, where Quinlan Voss is putting Asajj into the waters, right, to be with her people.
So Dark Disciple, what is that?
It's a book.
Okay.
Dark
Yeah, I know.
Disciple it was initially a script for a Clone Wars episode. It
Mhm.
didn't end up getting made into into the show, and so someone wrote a book around it, and it's essentially um, Quinlan Voss, who is the guy who put her in the water.
Mhm.
He has like the same abilities as like they showed it in another show where he can like touch an object and like see where it's been or who's had it. Like he has visions around it, right? And he gets put on a mission with Asajj Ventress to assassinate Count Dooku. And so that's kind of
That's
what,
right.
yeah. So that's kind of what it's about, and it's a very interesting book, and ultimately it ends with Asajj being killed, and Quinlan Voss had fallen in love with her, and she had fallen in love with him, and so at the very end he returns her to her people. He puts her in the waters, and yeah, and he walks away. And so what we pick up there, and the first episode of Tales of the Underworld, and then Mother Talzin is essentially saying you can return to the land of living, but you can never be with Quinlan, pretty much. So that's the price you pay if you want to return to life.
Yep.
So yeah. Anyway,
It was good. That was good stuff though. I like that whole Tell the World Cad Bane stuff. Actually, I was surprised how much I liked it.
yeah, I'll have to watch it because I haven't watched any of it. I really like Cad Bane as a character, so
Yeah.
I'll have to finish it. They're really short episodes, so yeah. Anyway, thanks for coming to our Star Wars talk, our TED Talks of Star Wars, our Across the Stars conversations. And we'll be back next week. You haven't seen Thunderbolts yet.
No, I haven't. I'm gonna see it hopefully next week because I'm broke
I
right now. But next week I'll be
I
because I had a
think I don't know what theaters. I think it's AMC that's doing like 50% off or $1 days on certain days of the week during the summer or
yeah.
something. So
I'm just gonna go to that Delta Theater because they remade it and everything like that. It's like to support like local business and stuff like that.
okay,
But it's just
okay.
I'm about to close a deal anyway, a real estate deal. So I'll be fine for a while.
Nice.
But yeah,
Nice.
does happen on the occasion.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you want to see it, I can send you money. I can just
No, I'm fine.
I can
I'm just
just
gonna. It's not the how. It's the when.
yeah.
Like the problem is like is getting the time. Like getting the date and being able to go out there and do the stuff when I'm
I feel it. I
So
feel it. Yeah, I've been working 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. most of the days, and now I will be working weekends as well. So
no, I heard.
time is hard to find these days.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah. But anyway, all right. Thanks everyone. Like, rate, review, comment, subscribe, do other things. We'll see you next time. Bye.